What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode. I want to jump right in because big week, bruh. If anybody's been keeping up, I already have an upload. Had a little short, sharing my opinions on the whole BLM movement that's been going on lately. I'm sure y'all can't miss it. It's been all over the internet, all over the news, and everywhere else. Because of such, I won't go into much detail about it unless it's related to any topics or articles in this week's podcast. So if you want me to go into detail about my opinions on that, go ahead and check out that video and tell me what you think. It's only about, say, what was it, about 15 minutes or so, 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm pretty sure you could enjoy the insight. And yeah. And if you found this channel, you're a part of this channel or subscribe, then that means that you are one of those who look for deep thinking, very unique and uninfluenced thoughts. Now, let's jump on into the podcast. Welcome back once again. My name is SlimCogcast, and unfortunately, I'm black, and I'm glad to have y'all here. We're going to kick it off and just talk about the anime for a minute. And one of the things that frustrates me about this week is, because of the game that I started playing this week, I completely, was so distracted and did not want to pull away from the game that I've been playing this week that I've been procrastinating watching the rest of the anime, because I'm still pretty good into like 15 episodes in the Fire Force, but I didn't want to put this game down because, with any game, especially like RPGs, when you start them new, they always have a slow start. You got to meet the characters, get used to the townsfolk, et cetera, et cetera. There's going to be a bunch of dialogue boxes and tutorials. So that's the hardest part for any RPG. And that's usually that phase where, you could easily get bored or fall asleep and whatnot, and you're ready for the game to kick off. But if you can power through that, the first 4 hours of any RPG, if you can power through the first 4 to 6 hours of any JRPG, then that's when you really get to the meat of it and you just can't put it down. And I've been feeling that with the latest game, and now I have trouble pulling back into my anime. But I do want to apologize about that, because I've spent so much time on it that I thought I could, squeeze the time in, crunch the time, play a little bit of the game for like 2 hours, turn it off at the next save point, and then move on, and watch the anime for about a couple hours before bed. No, son. Look back up. I've been playing RPG for about 5 hours. Try to watch the anime before bed. Fell asleep on it for 6 episodes. So that right there, oh man, that ain't nothing to be proud of. But I'm sure all of y'all know that feel. So just like, you've been watching a show on Netflix and you wake up to Netflix asking you, are you still there? So you just got to go back to the previous episodes and rewatch them again. Everybody knows that feel, okay? Especially if you're a seasoned anime watcher and you're used to certain tropes and habits that they do in writing shonen. Oh, man. Yeah, sometimes you're just ready to get to it. Yeah, so. But that being said, though, that doesn't count against Fire Force at all, because the reason it's frustrating is I'm enjoying the anime a lot. Like, I actually like it. Like, it's hype. Like the parts that I stopped at was right around the time when Tsukasa, I think the dude's name was, or was it the name of the town? They're freaking fighting these guys in these white robes from the what do they call them? The evangelicals, the evangelists, and they coming up showing up to be these badasses, but this dude is such a badass that it's insane. Like he literally, in order to save the town, every time something arises or an inferno pops up, he just destroys half the town and everybody celebrates, and they treat it like a ceremony, and they just rebuild the buildings right after, and he just ends up destroying half the town in like mere minutes, because he's that powerful. It's insane. It's so good, and I'm loving that, so I'll jump back in as soon as I get the chance. But another game thing, I'm gonna move on from anime, obviously why, and jump on into the game that I've been playing. And boy, this game actually been pulling me away from Overwatch. It's been pulling me away from Apex. Okage, the Shadow King. Oh my goodness, dude. The dialogue is quirky, is crazy, and each character is somewhat, unique and thoughtful. I could see myself, some parts didn't age too well, but I've been around and played a lot in the PS2 era to understand and still be able to immerse myself, and look past the rough edges because, dude, I could see myself loving this game if I played it when it came out. Like, and I've seen it on store shelves during that era, but just didn't grab it because I don't know why. I guess it was either the art style felt weird to me or whatnot. Because it took me a while to get into a game with similar art style was Psychonauts. It took me a while to get into that, but one of my favorite and original, completely unique and non-corrupted YouTubers from way back in like 2005 or 6 inspired me to play that game, and it was so interesting, conceptually, that I ended up going and getting it, and now Psychonauts is one of my favorites of all time. And I can see this game could have easily been up there in that same category if I was exposed to it in an early age. But to get down into the meat and potatoes of it, though, it's completely weird, type of art style and aesthetic, almost Tim Burton-esque, and your whole deal about it is these evil kings, and there's a concept about shadows. And the thing about it is they haven't really gone into deep detail about shadows yet. I guess that comes at the late game plot dump. But I'm about chapter 4. Yeah, I'm in chapter 4 or 5, maybe 5. I might be in chapter 5. But anywho's, the whole point and the premise in the beginning of the game is your father finds a magic lamp, opens it, and it releases a evil shadow king who has to possess a person's shadow. And guess what? They go through the entire family to find out what's the perfect host shadow for him to live in. And you won't believe whose is the best one. The main character, which default name of the main character is Ari or Ari. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I have a person that I know who's considered to be pretty close named Ari. So that's pretty much when I read it. That's where my mind goes when I read it. So when it comes to playing this game, the whole premise runs down as thus. You have to carry this guy Stan, which is oddly, he's supposed to be the evil king of all evil kings, like the most evil entity known. And this so-called evil king is like, well, unironically, one letter away from spelling Satan. But Stan is supposed to be weak, and he doesn't have his evil king powers and magical abilities. And so we have to, do this Mega Man-esque run and defeat all of the fake evil kings and have him absorb all of their magical powers and become the evil king once again. And as the story goes along, you meet these quirky characters and these unique personalities, and they clash with one another in the most hilarious way. And as you see these characters interact, it screams the fact, and I'm gonna believe it. That's why I say it as a fact, but it's truly an opinion. But screw it, I believe it wholeheartedly that these developers for this game are huge anime fans. Like, they are anime nerds, because whatever they were inspired by, it does harken back to the usual JRPG design philosophy, which I should research the developers actually and the development company, if they're still around or not, or what they've been, what they've been acquired by or who they publish under these days. But when you really think about it, the way I look at it is the way these characters interact seems like the usual skeleton plot points of anime written narratives and the Japanese, philosophy of writing. Even when it comes down to the archetype of the characters, you have the one scientist driven mad with insanity because he knows too much knowledge, the whole nihilistic point of view when it comes to an outlook on life because of too much studying. And then you have I guess you could call her. She's kind of tsundere, tomboyish girl, supposed to be like a hero, knight type of girl who fights with a rapier, named Rosalind. By the way, the scientist's name is Kaisling, and he's pretty cool. Um, and of course, your companion, the foil to the main character, Stan, who exists in the main character's shadow, is talkative, very jokey person. Very well. He doesn't want to come off as friendly, but he surely is. He's more the type of every time you hear him speak, there's a weird, a little music in the background type of personality that don't this is not what happens in game, but that's the type of character that he would paint himself to be, so and it fits, while the main character is meek, very quiet, not that sociable, and silent protagonist. Now, here's the meat and potatoes. Once again, the way they work out together, they really, complement one another. And he's usually spending his dialogue calling him slave, or, what's wrong with you? Why would you do this? Or complaining about the main character's choices that the player would do, where at the same time he would butt heads with the tomboy character, and she would make it her mission to defeat him, because apparently whatever he involves himself in a person's shadow or leaves a person's shadow, their shadow when he leaves their shadow, the shadow is pink. So I don't know why or what's the real explanation of that yet, or they haven't explained it yet, but I'm pretty interested to find out, what that's all about. But apparently Rosalind's shadow is pink, and they haven't gone into detail as to why or how it happened, but I can't wait until it's explained. And this is you first see this happen with the main character's sister, which is the reason why you agreed to make a shadow bond with Stan, because he could cure it and fix not cure it, but fix the pig Latin curse that was placed upon his sister. And when he fixed it, her shadow was left pink. So this same symptom was present in Rosalind, and in order for her to hide it, everywhere she goes, she holds a parasol or umbrella above her head, which makes a new shadow and makes it seem like a normal black shadow. And apparently she's very afraid of it, or, insecure about it. So she always carries the parasol no matter where she goes, whether it's indoors or outdoors. So, yeah. So, very interesting, weird, quirky characters thus far. The only character I hate so far is the princess, which actually she might actually be the tsundere. I can't tell. No, because she's actually pretty open when she's making romantic advances toward the main character. So it's hard to say what type of archetype she is, but she's very bossy and super annoying, and I hate her. So that makes her a good character. As long as art invokes some type of emotion or reaction, then that art has successfully done its job. It's supposed to be a form of interpretation or a cause of reaction as if it was real life. So yeah, that's what art is for. And it is doing a great job. Defeating the evil kings one by one, it seems to be that the magic power that they possess that make them evil kings, it entices them to want to go to a certain place underground in the back of some sewers, which seems to be the recurring theme every time we defeat one. And also they grow bigger in size and just start doing dastardly evil things, but they're all unique and quirky in a way. Whereas like the first was an evil rat king that was in the sewers, whereas the second was a big evil fish that kidnapped the princess. The third was a corporate, like a chairman or whatnot, like a CEO, a corporate CEO, evil king, who was all about not only, being, well, a corrupt corporate guy who takes advantage of the monetization of the entire town that he operates out of. He's like Big Corporation Incorporated. And also he spends his time after he becomes an evil king, that is, for some reason, spreading rumors about heroes and making the heroes look like they're in cahoots with the evil ghosts that pop up around, which is what every enemy that you fight, they're all ghosts of different forms and sizes. So yeah, it's interesting in a sense to where, you know, every character has their own motives and personalities, which is great. Even the antagonists. What else do you have? Yeah, the combat system. Let me go into the combat system for about a good 3 minutes, and then we're gonna move on. The combat system is not exactly unique, but very different in a few ways. One of the things is that some abilities are only activatable, you know, like buffs and whatnot. You have to spend health, and it seems to be health by percentage as you level in order to activate these abilities. So there's an ability the main character can activate called Overdrive. At the start, Overdrive costs 7 HP, but what it does is it gives a significant boost in attack power, where you get a new option in your attack to do a burst attack, where you just burst and hit every enemy on screen with, you know, still accuracy is up to the dice roll of RNG, but you can hit every enemy on screen in one attack, stronger than your normal basic attack. But there's always a chance you can miss some of them. So the accuracy is not that high on it. On top of that, if you don't use burst, though, you just use your basic attack while still having the buff active, it will almost double your attack output. So I found it better to go for the latter rather than the former, because it's better to just burst them down with, you know, consistent high damage output rather than use burst and do this damage that might be, you know, somewhat sufficient, and you still go back to your default state and lose the buff after using burst. So yeah, it seems pretty good and interesting. So you have to really weigh in on if you're gonna buff yourself and another party member, and that would add up to 14 HP gone, which is pretty huge in the beginning of the game when your starting max HP is about 30, 40. But at where I am now, I think I'm about level 18 or so, and HP across the board is about, you know, 110, you know, or more for Rosalind, because she's more tanky, and Kaisling, he's very squishy. He's more of the mage, which is a very unique concept. Him being the man of science, and he studies everything about ghosts, apparitions, and, you know, the metaphysical and whatnot. And in this sense, he is the mage, and he carries around these huge books that's all about, you know, the studies of ectoplasm and ghosts and whatnot. And he uses them to cast spells or whatever you want to call these abilities. So yeah, it's pretty interesting concept. On top of that, it's pretty good piece. Oh, and another thing that I liked about it a lot is debuffs hit every enemy of the same type. If you have, like, say, rats and some crows, if there's 3 rats on the enemy side and like 2 crows, if you debuff their power out, their attack, it would hit all of one type. So saying if those however many crows I said, if you choose to debuff the crows, all the crows get hit with the debuff. Whereas if you choose to hit the others, all of those other types get hit with the debuff in one turn. That's super great. I like that concept. Although it kind of makes it a little easier, but not exactly, since, you know, most RPGs you fight up to 3 enemies at a time maximum, maybe 4 in some, but in this one it's up to 8. It's up to 8. So I appreciate the consideration of balance when it comes to that. So battle system's pretty interesting. I don't find much difficulty in it. So yeah, Hokage's looking good, and we're moving forward. I'm actually in a dungeon right now where I last stopped. I actually started a new dungeon in the big tree hole against this other evil king, fake evil king or whatnot. So yeah, it's looking good. So that's Okage so far, and I'm kind of glad. Yeah, it's probably a good thing that I did procrastinate that because there's a lot of detail I could have gone in on about, but I'm trying to shorten down these podcast episodes as well because not only was it easier and took less time to edit, upload, publish, etc. the last week's podcast at 45 minutes, but also I want to keep it short and to the point unless necessary. We'll go over. So that being said, y'all know what to do. Let's kick it off and get into the news. Resident Evil creator, which is Shinji Mikami, the man himself, the man, the myth, the legend, says that his future games will be inspired by the coronavirus. That's dope, okay? Because that means that Shinji Mikami can not only go back to his roots of Resident Evil, but also, since he's not with Capcom, he's not going to be using that IP. Unless Capcom, has him work with them to publish and develop with them, but independently of working under them. But Shinji Mikami is gonna make a game based off of gonna be inspired by the coronavirus. So that means not only will he get back into maybe the concept of zombies and whatnot in order to make his horrors, but also he's gonna get back into the survival horrors, which I don't disagree with, but I'm not exactly anxious for, because Shinji Mikami has done a great job on other games outside of that, but people only want his survival horror games. Like he was the guy who brought us Vanquish with Platinum Games. That's one of the best third-person shooters I've ever played in my life. It's like top 2. Like it's literally one of the best third-person shooters you could ever play in your life. And it's a shame that not enough people know about it. But it's a great deal. It's great that it has a new set of following since its re-release on PC and PS4. So, says that he wants to develop a game based on it, and I don't blame him, because not only will that increase some involvement and relatability with the players, but it's gonna have that same effect that The Last of Us had with the cordyceps. And the concept that was going around with the cordyceps fungus that could control the minds of insects and worms to birds, and it would just get transferred from there to there to there. For those who don't know, I won't just jump and assume, but those who don't know, cordyceps is a real fungi that has a living a behavior, the behavior of a sentient living being, whereas the fungus would grow, the spores would spread and then nestle into the, like, say a leaf or whatnot, and then be eaten by an ant. And once it invades this ant, it would sprout out of the head of an ant, but it would also control the mind of the ant and have it go towards sunlight and climb on the highest branch or leaf of a plant so that it can be food, easily found food for a bigger life form. And when say a wow, English and words. When a caterpillar comes along and devours that ant, it would also be infected by this fungus or fungi, and it would control the mind of the caterpillar or worm, and it too would crawl to the top of a leaf or plant, sit there as obvious bait, and then sprout out of that host and then be consumed by a bird that would be looking for that worm or caterpillar. Then it would carry on to do the same thing to the bird, which then in turn gets consumed by a cat or whatnot, and then it will just repeat and repeat and repeat. And the people used to be afraid of it. They found that the human genetic makeup and physiologic I guess you could say design of the human is too complex for the fungus to overpower it. Plus, the human immune system can easily devour and do away with the fungus and whatnot. But that's due to whatever you want to call it, evolutionary traits, or grand design, whatnot. We're not here to mince words, but reason is for the reason as it is. But that it is what it is, and I find that pretty cool. So for those who didn't know about the cordyceps fungus, that's what the whole premise about The Last of Us was, which is why it was so, great and relatable and pretty cool to see it played out. However, most of the things in The Last of Us, of course, was just spun off of that. That's just the origin and where, they birthed it from that. But everything else, like, the creation of the zombies and it being able to infect human, all of that is mere I shouldn't have to say this, but it's all fictional for the sake of the game itself. So, but still a super cool premise nonetheless. And if that same premise could be used to write a great lore for his future works, then that would be cool. So yeah, Mikami gave an interview with in which he commented on his upcoming project from Tango Gameworks, Ghostwire Tokyo, which debuted at Bethesda's E3 press conference 2019. However, shortly after its announcement, the game's creative director Ikumi Nakamura left the studio. While Mikami didn't offer any new information on Ghostwire, other than simply stating Ghostwire is a completely new type of game, so I really hope people look forward to it, a representative for Tango Gameworks chimed in on Mikami's involvement in the game's development, claiming for projects where he isn't the director, he respects the director's opinions and focuses on only assisting the director. So, therefore, it seems that Ghostwire still will be a thing. It's going to be going through. And the trailer is available still online. Go ahead and check it out under Bethesda Softworks YouTube channel if you want to get a feel for it. And it looks like they're going to be using the coronavirus as the premise of the backstory of everything that happens in the game. And I find that interesting. So, especially being a fan of Shinji Mikami and his works and whatnot, that's going to be pretty great. So, and in lieu of that, we're going to transition very smooth like butter into the next article of the week, which would be about Capcom and its whole statement about Resident Evil 3 and the status quo of it, rather. Because of those who remember, there's been a lot of controversy around Resident Evil 3 at its release because it did not have as much content or robust gameplay hours as its predecessor, the remake of Resident Evil 2. Quality-wise, the game was amazing, and it looked incredible. All art direction and redesigns were astounding, and I can't really say anything terrible about it because I don't want to go into detail about a game that I haven't played personally. I've experienced the demo of it before its release, and I extensively played the Resistance beta. So I find that if they were truthful, faithful to the original works and the source material, then it can't be bad. People just seem to be underwhelmed based on the general consistency of what I've been seeing. People just been underwhelmed. Now, the whole point about this is that they announced, Capcom saying that Resident Evil 3 is a finished product and they don't plan to add any more extra DLC or updates and whatnot and patches. According to the article, just to keep it short and simple, I'll paraphrase it for you. The straight facts, which is they announced that most of their attention is going to be toward the Resistance multiplayer aspect when it comes to any updates or add-ons, and I find that to be understandable. I don't see anything bad about this decision, honestly, because Resident Evil 3 is a full $60 experience in my opinion. Okay, because not only do you get the entire Resident Evil 3 remade, but also you get a multiplayer feature which is new and completely robust, which was more than the Mercenaries mode that we originally got in PlayStation 1's version of the Resident Evil 3 entry. Which, by the way, I have to say that a lot of people who complain about the game being short and wanted more out of it have to recall or even, learn otherwise, that Resident Evil 3, the original game, was not long. It was actually short. I would even go further and say that 2 was not very long either. It was just the fact that you had 2 different split scenario, the zapping system, I think it was called. The split scenarios between Leon and Claire that gave you more game to play. So it was more for you to play. And so it doubled the amount of, gameplay that you would put into it. But all in all, because 3 solely focused on one character, which they probably planned on doing the same zapping system with her and what was his name? Luis? Or whatnot? Oh, Ricardo. Let's just give him a random Spaniard name. But yeah, he literally seemed like he was supposed to be the focal point of the story, or at least one of them, and somewhat of a support / main character, but took a back seat to be literally just purely a support character throughout the game. And we can't be mad at that. I mean, it was what it was. And if they changed the original too much, let's be honest here, there'll be people lining up with pitchforks saying, this is not my Resident Evil 3, fix it. And there'll be also people saying, hey, if they didn't change it just enough, then they'd say this game is just as flawed as the first. Is just 3, the same flaws and all, with a shiny new coat of paint and graphics, and that's not enough. So I find it that the only thing they would complain about not being long enough is probably a good thing, because it seems like their development objective was to make sure that they please the originals and those who played it for the first time. So nobody really complained about the game being bad. So hey, success in my book. So yeah, and it makes sense that they wouldn't update the original campaign, because why? What else do you want to add without ruining the lore? So keep it moving, and just update the multiplayer. Yeah, because now you have something to compete with the Dead by Daylight fan base, so why not do such a thing? It's a great idea. And the multiplayer is good. I enjoyed it, for what it's worth in the bid time in the beta. So yeah. Moving on. Next, we have an article here about the developers of the Kerbal Space Program. And this right here, you hate to see it. It really tears me up a little taste. We have an article over here on Bloomberg.com, written by Jason Schreier. Very familiar name right there. Let's not get into the details. But yeah, 3 months after losing a deal with Take-Two, Star Theory Games was out of business. And all of this couldn't have happened at the worst time, because this whole agreement and this deal that they were offered, happened right before the COVID-19 thing hit, and it was very rough. But a pretty long and extensive article to give you the plot points. Basically, what happened is that they offered them a deal to sign on with them, because originally they were the publisher for the game that they were they were in development for 2 years, and they were working on the game, and they were just had a publisher, but their publisher then offered to say, we're gonna not publish the game, but we're gonna offer you a deal to work under us at our development studios and whatnot, and we'll give you this amount of money and upfront signing bonus and etc. and all these and this and that, and promises after denying them the option to publish the game independently, because they were an independent development team. So not only did they do that, but also it's the fact that it was so scummy. It was so scummy. They said, okay, we're not going to develop the game that you've been working for us for 2 years. We're not going to publish it anymore. Excuse me. But you can work under us if you so choose. So they tried to cut them off under their legs, just pull the rug from under them and let them fall. So now they need to find a new publisher for their game. But also, they said, on top of that, we'd like to offer you and everybody at your studio a job during the COVID-19 hit. So they were also desperate, because this is rough. You've been 2 years into development. They need a payoff, and that's so scummy for them to do that. Like, that's down. I'm just gonna say it's fucked up. They're wrong for it, bro. Like, think about it. Not only have they lost their chance to get their game out there now, but they're hiring people from their independent development team. That's called poaching. They've poached their entire team to where there's only a few people left, and they had no choice but to close the doors on the company. That is whack. That's terrible. So bad, bro. And another thing that hurts is what they should have done. They should have started some type of Kickstarter or GoFundMe or something, because if this news got out about this, the fan base of the Kerbal Space Program is actually kind of big. Like, they love that game. They're pretty loyal. I'm pretty sure that a lot of fans and gamers would have supported and helped them and donated in order to keep this from happening, because their whole indie development studio was started from Kickstarter. All right. So if you were started from those people, I'm pretty sure they would have given you your energy. Okay. They would have helped you with that. And this is, I hate to see this happening, man. This is wrong, man. So it's a shame that this happens, but this is business, and it is cutthroat sometimes. And we need something to happen here. This needs to be fixed. It's a downright shame. But yeah, that's the long and short of it. It's just basically the publisher. Take-Two, bruh, go to hell. Like, they wrong for that, man. It was fishy from the get-go. They knew it was wrong, and they went and did them like that. I can't, man. I can't. And their stock just went up by 29%. That's trash. Anywho, excuse me, it went up by 1.03%. So, yeah, that's trash. They deserve to burn for that. Moving to the next thing, y'all could tell that hurts me. You could tell. But moving to the next thing, some good news this week. Over on GameDebate.com. That's game-debate.com. Another article written by Neil Soter, stated that Epic Games Store free giveaways actually increase sales on other platforms, says Tim Sweeney. And of course, we've spoken about Tim Sweeney. No, we haven't. Tim Sweeney, Mr. Sweeney, he's one of the head names at Epic Games, and who also had a bit of a run-in with Linus Sebastian, a Canadian of Linus Tech Tips, a pretty big name on YouTube when it comes to the PC Master Race crowd, but heavily hated on because his content is pretty casual, as some PC people would state it. I'll get into that in a moment, but apparently Tim Sweeney states that the Epic Games free games are pretty huge for every platform out there, because giving away these free games, he states, I'll just read the quote: you're not going to go out and buy if you're not into a certain game, like say Satisfactory. You're not going to go out and spend money to buy Satisfactory. But if you get it for free and you realize it's an awesome game, people have discovered a lot of great games that way. He said, it's been a benefit for game developers. Most developers who launched their games for free on the store found that their sales on Steam and on console platforms actually increased after they went free on Epic because of increased awareness. And so it's been a really positive thing, and it's brought tens of millions of new users into the Epic Games ecosystem. And that's been a wonderful thing for the company. So, to summarize this in my words, personally, though, it's all about when it comes to business. If you're starting Epic Games store is still new and fresh. And with any business that you're starting out, you're going to have to give away freebies. You're going to have to give out samples. You're going to have to give out some stuff to let people try it out so you can get your product to speak for itself. That way, if it is successful, everybody would flock to it because of what the product is rather than who's selling the product. Meaning, as long as there's more games being sold, then that means that people would trust the brand that sold it to them. Meaning, if you got a game for free on PlayStation Plus, you enjoy it, say you upgrade to PC Master Race years later, and you want to play that game on PC. You want to experience it in a different fashion, and you've already experienced it in one way. Okay, you're a fan already. You're a fan of that series. You know, it's a lot of people who end up liking games because of such. Humble Bundle has done the same thing for years. This is not new. It's one of the main reasons why the Steam library is so popular with its sales, because there's a lot of games that lose a lot of attention, but they gain new fans in the future because they were willing to let their game drop down to a lower price. There's a lot of games that don't really make new fan bases because they don't appreciate, but that's a different, situation altogether, because they don't need to develop a new fan base. Like Nintendo, for instance. Everybody loves Nintendo. So the reason for that is it's going to be sold via word of mouth and social interaction. But when it comes to these new developers or these obscure games, you won't really find it won't get a lot of exposure, especially since they're indie games that can't afford a lot of advertisement. So this is a great way to do it. This is a great marketing tactic to get a lot of games out there, especially for indie developers. So yeah, I don't mind it. And it's pretty good. So we should also say, I will say though, Epic needs to find those great diamond in the rough indie games that are 10 out of 10 and AA titles that need new life to make more of a fan base, because the GTA free game was to attract people to making an Epic Games account. Okay, now that they're on the Epic Games Store account, now it's time for you to shed some light on some great, amazing games that didn't get a lot of exposure. So yeah, moving on from that. Last article for the week, and it is that I wanted to make this the last one because of what's related. Oh, before we go further, to make it quick, the thing about Tim Sweeney and Linus Sebastian from Linus Tech Tips was that Linus had a podcast, and he just, made a passing joke about the integration of the SSDs in the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox One X, the Xbox Series X, So, in the podcast, he was just like, all he's heard, which to his defense, all he's heard in the articles of what they've been reporting about this new technology integration was just, yeah, we have better SSDs than you. No, we don't. My SSD is better than yours, which is what he said in the joke. But, which was just, harkening back to console wars, which is what it comes down to whenever you discuss PlayStation and Xbox and their new consoles coming out. It always boils down to the console wars. And that was his, passing comment about it. It wasn't anything meant to be taken too seriously. But his fan base, being the casuals that follow him so religiously, they took it and they ran with it and just started memeing about it. Like, they're just all over the place, going, oh, well, the SSDs are just, and the Epic Games guy doesn't know what to talk, Tim Sweeney, idiot, this, and people all over the internet talking about it. They're like, oh, yeah, according to Linus, you guys are dumb, blah, 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 blah. And the blame it's not exactly on anyone, but because Linus, his whole premise of his channel and how he carries himself is that he's giving uninfluenced, unbiased opinion on technology that's coming out in order to better educate and inform his fan base about technology. So that way, you know, his opinion can't be bought and he can always be honest about it, you know, keeping it real, basically. And that's the premise that he sells it under. So when people hear what he has to say, they're going to believe it as if it's gospel and spread it. But this backfired because this joke was taken as, you know, him stating a hardline fact. So, and taking a hardline stance on something. And it turned into the ugliest thing ever because the worst fan bases out there are the console wars fan base. And it's been nasty since the beginning, you know, and console wars are not new. Of course, yes, it's been happening since the Amiga, since the Atari, since Nintendo, all of these things. It's been around for decades. So yeah, here we are. Basically he had to issue an apology because he wanted to find out more about the, SSD's integration into the PlayStation 5 and what they choose to, you know, how they choose to utilize it in order to get the most out of gaming performance for console in the future. Though he has not had a chance to get any interviews or had to sit down with anybody on the topic within PlayStation or Microsoft. So, I mean, Sony or Microsoft. So, you know, and that's understandable as well because of course they're trying to keep it under wraps until it is revealed. They're keeping an eye on the competition. I'm pretty sure Microsoft is afraid of being, you know, shown to be an idiot like they did with the Xbox One launch about sharing games or, you know, every game, you know, being unique to one console once the disc is inserted, stuff like that. If anybody remembers that. So yeah, it makes sense for it to be all tight-lipped. And he Mr. Sweeney took a professional stance and just said, no, there's nothing more to say. Everything that has been said that hasn't already been said, you know. So Linus took it upon himself to make a public apology on his channel with no ads, no distractions in the background. And it was all, you know, as genuine as it could ever seem. So I say that's the best apology on YouTube I've ever seen, aside from, you know, and this is compared to like the terrible fake crying of James Charles or the horrible, hey, whatnot. I apologize. You know, I was wrong. You know, too far leaning in, too far into self-debasement and self-deprecation and whatnot. So this was actually professional and it was well done. And I respect it. That being said, though, but then we could also compare it to a recent apology by Doja Cat, but everybody's all, I think people leaning too hard into it, you know, and yeah, I'll full disclosure, I am a fan, but when it comes to things that celebrities have said, like people are way too vitriolic when it comes to what a celebrity speaks on or sharing their opinion. It's like they will crucify a celebrity for having their own opinion. It's like, okay, if you charge this celebrity with being real and thinking for themselves, and that's what you respect about this celebrity, then you'll have to respect for them to not agree with you sometimes. Terry Crews is under fire right now for the Black Lives Matter tweet that he said recently. You want to check it out. And I can't get mad at him for what he said because still he's not completely wrong, you know. But the further we go further, we've shown that we have regressed. It's still mob mentality, you know, and I want to beat the enemy by showing that we don't have to stoop to a lower level. We got to find unity in a more uniform fashion, in a more, you know, respectable fashion. You know, it's a time for being aggressive. And there's a time for violence and there's a time for showing that we are not to be fooled with. No, screw that. There's a time for showing that we're not to be fucked with. And I agree with that. But there's also a time that we need to show the opposite side, that we can beat them at their own game, that we are superior, that we have grown and we are more than what you say that we are, that you think that we are. And we will beat you on your own ground, on your own turf. We have to do it like Goku. You could go into your final form, So that way, when you learn that I've still beaten you at your best, then it's a lesson that you have no choice but to accept or stay bitter about. Because not only have I proved to you that you cannot hold me down or defeat me, but also you have to struggle with the fact that you have been beaten utterly and you won't try again. Defeat is a state of mind. That means that no matter what fight there is, physical, economical, social, whatever it is, whatever battle there is, you have to ultimately win the mental game. Okay? So, all in all, moving forward, let's get into the last topic of the day, of the week. And this one's from PlayStation, Sony themselves. They announced on Twitter that we have decided to postpone the PlayStation 5 event scheduled for June 4th, which I reported about last week in the podcast. Said, while we understand gamers worldwide are excited to see the PlayStation 5 games, we do not feel that right now is a time for celebration. And for now, we want to stand back and allow more important voices to be heard. Short, sweet, to the point, and completely agree. That's very smart. That's very, very smart. And it shows that the people working under Sony might actually be, somewhat aware, because one of the biggest issues that people would be afraid of the fact is that whenever there's something big or something that we need to pay attention to or something crucial happening when it comes to social equality and racial injustice and whatnot, and homophobia, these big things that's going on, they complain. We know there's most of the things that will come out of most people's mouth is there's big distractions around that keep us from the facts. The big distractions around that keep us from fixing the status quo. And this right here is great because the biggest form of media right now is video games. It's bigger than movies and TV shows right now, and definitely more than radio. So the fact that they decide to take a step back, knowing that it would be huge news, trending news for weeks on end when the PlayStation 5 is revealed. Yeah, smart move. Very good move. And hopefully these efforts will not be wasted. Along those lines, Rockstar Games also decided on, I forget the date. Was it on the 5th or the 4th? One of those days this past week, that they decided to make all servers on Red Dead Redemption 2 and Grand Theft Auto 5 to be down for like a blackout period with a message saying that Black Lives Matter and to show their support, And of course, this had a number of reactions. Of course, you have some people do it for clout, just to meme and double down on the racism and say, I don't care about what's going on with George, blah, blah, blah. I want to play my video game, things like that. And, go ahead, be edgy if you want. That doesn't faze me. Just that's internet clout chasing for you. Ain't nothing new. But all in all, I think it was effective and it did pretty good. There's even been clips and videos of people in GTA all dressed in black, wearing masks and whatnot, doing protesting games. So, whatever that's supposed to bring about is still a good message, for those who aren't right out there in public taking the risk of their lives. I won't cheapen your efforts and your involvement in game, but still, it's an effort made. So I can't hate. And ultimately, I'll say this. As a black YouTuber myself, content creator, all of this, it feels inevitable and it had to happen. And things can't get back to normal unless it is rectified. So there's plenty of perspectives, opinions, and thoughts going around on your social media these days. I don't have to tell you, you've seen them. Your best option is two things. One, don't pick a side unless you completely support it. And two, look out for your own mental health in consuming all of this stuff that you're seeing. Okay? Because it can wear you down. It can cause you to feel, some type of urgency or nervousness or even fear or just injustice. It'll make you feel any types of well of emotions. So just be careful about that. Take in a limited amount of this daily, media. Okay. Don't turn a blind eye, but don't overindulge either. Okay. Because it will affect you in the long run. So please take care of yourselves out there. This has been another week, another episode of the SlimCogcast. All right. Take care and always remember the channel motto, which couldn't be more important in these trying times. Okay. And that motto is intentions are the most important. Actions ain't nothing but loud. And words don't mean a damn thing. I love you all. I'll see you next week.